Bibliophiles of the Internet. My name is Adriana, and today I'm finally here to bring you my January wrap-up. There are a few things you should know, and the first is that I've started to loosely experiment with themed TBRs, and the first of 2016 was just middle grade January. This is exactly what it sounds like. In January, I endeavored to read only middle grade books. Of course, I had to make a couple of exceptions for A, required reading, and then B, manga, which we'll talk about shortly. To get started, the very first book I read in 2016 and the first one I read for just middle grade January, and thank everything it was this book, was Goodbye Stranger by Rebecca Stead. One of the main characters in this story is named Bridget, and she has just survived a near-death accident. She has two close best friends, and their one rule in their friendship is that they don't fight. But as they grow older, they start to realize that that rule isn't really holding up too well. The story is actually told in multiple perspectives, but one of the other main characters is a boy named Sherm, who has just started to get to know Bridget, and he's really liking her as a friend. Everyone around them seems to think they're in a romantic relationship or going in that direction, but they both feel like something different is happening between them and it's not romantic. So they're also trying to negotiate that as well. I'm just gonna say it, I love this book. I thought it was incredible. It's so valuable. I wish I had this book growing up because it's so important and wonderful. It examines relationships, friendships, romantic relationships. It celebrates platonic relationships, but it also examines toxic friendships. And how do you know when something has turned into something that is not healthy for either participants? How do you handle relationships that are constantly evolving as you grow up? How do you negotiate with the friends that you already have? How do you implement changes or even know when a change in your friendship is needed or called for? How do you identify when something is no longer making you happy, and how do you walk away from that? Or how do you let people back into your life? Those are some of the central questions that this book tackles, and I think it does it very well. Rebecca Stead is a fantastic author, and she did so much great work in such a short amount of time in this story. I really respect her work, and at the end of this book, I felt something like hope, something pure and happy and buoyant, and I just wish more people could feel that feeling, and that's why I really responded well to this story. I love this book. I can't wait to read it again, and I gave it a 4.5 out of 5 stars. After that, I read From the Notebooks of a Middle School Princess by Meg Cabot. This is like a companion, spin-off, middle grade series to the Princess Diaries series. The main character, Olivia, is actually the half-sister of Mia Thermopolis, and this follows her on the day that she finds out that she is in fact related to royalty and how that changes her life. Y'all know I love Meg Cabot, but I'm gonna be honest here and say that this felt like a cash grab. My biggest problem with this book is it feels like it wasn't genuinely written for the intended audience, because this spin-off series is geared towards middle readers, and those younger readers won't be able to enjoy, understand, or even fully appreciate this story because it's dependent on having the context of all 11 currently published Princess Diaries books. And how many young readers have that background? I would say not many. And without that understanding, this story feels flat and uninteresting, so it doesn't even stand alone without that context. This book is basically a rehash of certain events from Royal Wedding, and even as someone who has read and loved the Princess Diaries series so much, reading this book didn't even add to my enjoyment of that series. Plus, like I said, it also felt kind of forced, and it definitely didn't feel genuine, so in the end I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. Then I read Crenshaw by Catherine Applegate. This is a heart-wrenching, beautifully told story that addresses children who deal with homelessness. The story follows Jackson and his family, who have fallen on hard times before, and to cope with that, Jackson developed a relationship with an imaginary friend named Crenshaw, but then his family got back on their feet and things evened out again. But now he started to see Crenshaw again and more frequently, and he's scared that these sightings mean that his family is about to go through another tough time again. This story is simply written, it's bare bones, but deceptively so, because you can tell this was thoughtfully put together. You can really tell that Catherine Applegate did her research and talked to children who actually have dealt with homelessness in their lives, and then she used that knowledge to very carefully and realistically render this complex family experience. The thing about homelessness is that most people go to great lengths not to think about it. It's one of the invisible struggles in our world, but this story is told steadily and it doesn't allow you to ever look away or to ever forget. And I think that's what's so powerful about it, and I think that's why I so strongly responded to it. This book was great. Quiet but powerful, a little bit short for my liking, but still great nonetheless, and I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. Then I did a thing that I'm both very proud about and I very strongly regret all at the same time, and that was that I read the remaining 31 volumes of Hunter x Hunter by Yoshihiro Tagashi. For those of you who don't know, Hunter x Hunter is like an epic, sprawling adventure series about a main character named Gon Frixis, whose father, Jing Frixis, basically abandoned him and left him with his aunt because he wanted to grow up to be like the world's greatest hunter, which he eventually did. Then, of course, as he grows up, Gon also wants to become a legendary hunter and follow in his father's footsteps, but he also wants to be a hunter so he can figure out where his father is and what happened to him, why he loved hunting so much that he essentially abandoned his only child. But to do that, Gon must first pass the rigorous and very complicated hunter exam, and that is just the first hurdle on this epic adventure. Can you tell that I regret everything? As I've said before, I love the world of Hunter x Hunter as well. It's rich, it's detailed, it's so fully developed, it's vast, it's huge, it's sprawling, and I love it so much. It's occupied by so many interesting characters, and the main characters in this series are just amazing. They're so well written, and they go on some epic arcs in which they grow and change so much. It's just overwhelming, and I don't know what to say. Needless to say, I gave most of these volumes 4 stars or higher, especially the ones towards the latter half of the series, except for the ones where Hisoka was being a perv. Because no. Then for my Asian American Lit class, I reread Everything I Never Told You by Celeste Ng. Thank everything for great syllabi, am I right? In case you don't know, this story is set in 1970s Ohio and it follows the Lee family. They are multi-ethnic, biracial, and recently the middle daughter, Lydia, has died under very mysterious circumstances. So rather than concern itself with the obvious questions of who or how and take the route of a mystery novel, this story rather concerns itself with the question of why. Why did this happen? When did it all start? Could it have been prevented? And it's really more about the family's collective mourning, their collective, recursive, obsessive thought about why this all happened and where it all began. And more than that, it's also about how Lydia was this balancing figure in this very precarious and fragile family dynamic, and how now that she's out of the picture, that family dynamic has started to slowly but surely splinter apart. The story is told omnisciently, which I still can't even wrap my mind around. The narration and the narrative is seamless, it seems effortless, it's clean, evocative, powerful, moving, thoughtful, and it's one of those books where you finish reading it and you think to yourself, why should I even try for anything in this world when this exists? All I have to say is that I wrote a 7-page paper on Everything I Never Told You, just about food imagery and egg imagery and how it communicates the family dynamic to the reader, and I could have gone on for so much longer than that. And if that does not tell you how detail-oriented and how well written this book is, then I don't know what will. Every word, every image, every interaction is so rich and carries so much meaning. This book gives you so much to think about, and it's really just an astonishing feat of literature. That's the bottom line. But the point is, I gave Everything I Never Told You 5 out of 5 stars again. And the last book I read in January was The Girl Who Circumnavigated Fairyland in a Ship of Her Own Making by Catherine M. Valente. This story is about a girl named September who is whisked away to Fairyland, and upon arriving there she finds out that the eccentric inhabitants of Fairyland are not very happy because they've been recently subjected to the rule of a tyrannical Marquess. And so to figure out more about this evil Marquess, September travels to the capital of Fairyland, and she's also trying to figure out what happened to the previous and most beloved queen. But along this journey, not only will she risk possibly losing her way, but she will also risk losing her heart. This story, this world, has all of the vibrancy and imagination of classic fairy tale adventure stories like The Wizard of Oz, Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, The Phantom Tollbooth. This story takes inspiration from those stories. It has those elements. It has that easy whimsy, it has that lightness and that buoyancy about it, but there's more. There's something more to this story. There is pain. There's loss, sadness, loneliness, isolation, unsurety. There's self-doubt. And that makes this story have so much depth, and it makes it so rich and complex because there's something emotionally at stake for September, and you can feel that every step of the way. And I think that's why I responded so strongly and so well to this story, because it feels like there's something to be lost. Making my way through this book was easily one of the most memorable, exciting, fantastic reading experiences I've had in a long time, because not only did this world make me imagine something, make me want something, but it made me feel something. And also this book set up perfectly for the sequel. I can't wait to see what happens, and I know it's going to be great. So I gave this first book a huge 5 out of 5 stars. But those were all the books I read in January, and having read 4 middle grade novels, I am calling just middle grade January a success. Even though I read things that weren't middle grade, it's still a success because I said so. In the comments down below, I would love to hear from you if you have read and loved any of the books I mentioned in this video today, or I would love to know what was your favorite book that you read in January. But that is everything I had for this wrap-up video today. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope that you enjoyed it, and I will catch you on the flip side of the page. Bye!